Hi, it's Jo from Minerva. Today we're going to do a sew along of New Look 6526. I'm going to do view B, which is probably easy to see on the layout drawing, which has a lace top and a plain bottom. So we're going to be showing you today how to work with some beautiful lace. This is a Gapur lace and it's got quite a cutout feature. So I'm going to be using some crepe behind that so that you get a colour showing through. So the lace will be on the top with the crepe behind, and then a full skirt of crepe. The dress is lined, so I'm going to show you how to work with the lace fabric, with a backing fabric and some lining. It's quite a wide-ranging pattern in that you can do a lace overlay for a really fitted dress. You can have just a completely fitted dress, which you could make as a casual one with a cotton poplin. Or there's one here that you could use a georgette or a viscose to make that sort of more 1970s drape buffet dress style. Still got a narrow waist. And this one, which would make a fabulous prom dress, this one has a sort of chiffon or georgette overlay or a very fine lace overlay that you could put over the top of there. So you could use lace for this pattern or the pattern above. I've made a toile ready so that I can make a fitted dress, and all the adjustments have already been made. I really recommend making a toile because when I measured myself for this pattern, my bust measurement was in size 12. My waist measurement wasn't even on this pattern, and it goes from 12 to 18, and my hip measurement was within 18. So I was working with a quite wide size range from size 12 to 18. Those sort of measurements rang an alarm bell with me that I needed to make a toile. So I've made a toile so that I can fit the top, the waistband, and I will get enough room through the hips. Everything to make this dress is listed below, including the tools that I use. There'll be a few different things for using lace, but you'll definitely need some really great scissors so that you can get a really clean cut. I'm not going to show you how to cut out, but you need to cut out all of your pieces because I'd rather spend the time showing you how to work with lace. Just make sure that you add all of your notches and markings, and also that you get the grain line right for the sash and the skirt pieces. The skirt pieces have two grain lines on, a very long one and a shorter one, and the short one is the one you'll need to follow for view B. So make sure that you're getting the grain line right and you've chosen your hem length. When cutting out the skirt pieces, I've obviously used the grain line here for view A and B, so I've made sure that I've got my skirt on the right angle. And now the skirt has not gathers, but it has pleats, so I need to mark all of these pleat lines onto my fabric, and the best way to do that for me is a carbon paper and a tracing wheel. It's so simple. It's very, very accurate. Otherwise, you're going to need to put tailor's tacks each end. I've also got a pocket placement. So I'm looking for these small dots. So I'm going to put those on because that will show me where my pockets go. And then I'm going to be marking the same on my pockets. You probably can't see those, but I can see really nice clear lines where I'm going to be bringing my pleats together. I'm going to continue to do that and put all the rest of the markings on the skirt pieces. I've got the bottom of the zip. So I'm going to put the zip placement on. I've got a couple of other notches for marking up the side seams. So I'm going to carry on cutting out and marking out all the rest of my skirt pieces. Finally, to cut the sleeve, I have chosen my size, and I have adjusted that a little bit because I've taken some out of the princess seams. And you might like to try and use the edging on your lace if it's got a border edge, or if you're using a tulle that's got a embroidered border, you can put that on the sleeve. I'm making a short sleeve. It is a long sleeved view B, but I'm making it short sleeved, and then I'm using this daisy motif as the sort of border around my sleeve. I'm going to keep that little bit of stabilizing selvage on because that's stopping that stretching out, and that's ready for when I'm going to fit that into the bodice. There's two ways to work with lace. You can do this technique where you make yourself one piece of fabric by tacking the lace to the backing fabric. So that would work for the pattern that I'm using now, or it would work for New Look 6447, because behind here, this is going to be lined and pressed out flat. This technique particularly works if you've got a thick lace like I've got, so a thicker lace can be pressed. You can get that nice and flat, and then that will be enclosed with lining. Or you can try a technique with a tulle or a lighter chantilly lace where you make two dresses. So you make a dress with French seams. So for this example, I've chosen the Sew Over It Ultimate Shift dress. So you make one dress out of lace, all French seamed, and you make a dress out of your under fabric, whether that's lining or crepe or a viscose jersey or whatever style you want, if it's a stretch one or not. And then you attach it around the neck and hand stitch down. So today I'm showing you the technique of using lace where you make one piece of fabric out of the lace. So you treat the lace with the underlayer as one piece. So once you've cut out all of your pieces, then you will have a layer of your fabric. This is a crepe. This is a soft crepe that's quite pliable. So when I add the lace to it, it's not making it too stiff. And then the first part of the pattern is to apply interfacing to the centre pieces. So this is the centre bust line. This is the neckline here. You will also be applying interfacing to the back neck facing as a back neck facing as well. So that goes straight onto, it's not a separate facing, it's just a stiffener so that you get a nice line around the back of the neck. So there's two of those. And then your next job is to cut your lace and then tack your lace to your under fabric. So this one is hand tacked on, and it's hand tacking works for this type of lace because it's very open lace. So I needed to sort of, my tacking isn't in a beautiful straight line. I used a different colour thread so I can easily pull it out after, because my tacking is a little bit erratic to get myself to a solid piece of lace to attach it. I did try, your machine might work, but I did try doing a machine line all the way around on the largest stitch, but it drags the lace. So then at the end, you can see I've lost some of the ease in my lace there. So I did one line and decided that wasn't the right technique, so I went for a hand tack. So once you've hand tacked all of your pieces and interfaced all of your pieces, then you're ready to start assembling your dress. Normally I would pin and sew straight on the machine when I was assembling something, but I've actually gone for a tack on this. So I've tacked or basted the pieces together because I want to make sure that I'm getting my lace lines to match up. Now you can go for full-on pattern matching if you want, but I prefer to do a sort of pattern balance. So you can see I've got these circles running along here, and I've got the thicker line of daisy flowers running along here. Now it's not exact, because here you'll see I'm running out a bit because I'm working on a curve and a princess seam. I just want the illusion that nothing's jarring, that things are sort of gently rolling along. So I'm going to go ahead and tack the whole of the bodice together. I'm going to try it on for my next fitting, and then we can show you how to deal with the insides and how to sew it and press it out flat. Okay, I've got my bodice together, all tacked and sewn because I've tried it on, and I have pressed all the seams, and I used a press cloth because I didn't want to damage the lace, and I pressed it from the inside. So this is what the inside will look like, and the seams aren't finished because they're going to be on the inside and I'm not getting any fraying anyway. I've got some quite chunky seams here where I'm two seams are meeting, but what I've done is I've hand stitched those down. So I used a white thread so that I could catch a bit of the white lace from the other side. So those are completely flat and they'll lie flat on the body, so I won't get like a double seam making a bulky space. So the bodice is completely enclosed and pressed. So now I can start working on the pleats on the skirt. So your first job is to find the front skirt piece, and that's the one cut on the fold. That's piece number 7, and that is going to be sewn down the skirt side, and there's a notch to match there, so you're making sure that you've put it on the right way, and your pocket notches are on the outer seam. So I'm going to sew that together. You can see here the solid line to match this pleat. The solid line to match this pleat is on this other piece, so you need to join the front pieces together first, and then we can start bringing those pleat lines together. When you're pinning the pleats, it helps if you've got sort of the weight of the fabric on the table. Otherwise, it's sort of, you'll get your pleat sort of dragging down a little bit, and you're going to bring the solid lines to the centre of the dotted line. So it's not to the dotted lines, or you'll have a little gap. So it's to the centre of the dotted lines. And put more than one pin in. If you put just one pin at the top, it'll kind of rock out from there. You won't quite get the same line. So just put 2 in, because that supports the whole pleat while you're making it. You're going to bring the next solid line to the centre of the dotted lines. And the top should match up if you're being nice and accurate. I'm just going to pin it roughly to stop it slipping away, and you can see that is my centre dart. Because we've joined the two skirt seams together, so this is the skirt side, this is the skirt centre front, we've then got 2 dots here to bring together, so we're going to bring those to the centre here. And that will be the next pleat. So effectively you've got one bit of a pleat line on one skirt piece and one bit of a pleat line on another, but when you bring them together you'll have a full pleat. So can you see how these pleats are working now? So it's probably a good idea to pin right down so that you're not putting any weight pressure on the top that pulls the pleat out of shape. You can machine baste around here, but because crepe is quite a bouncy fabric, I want to make sure that the pleats stay absolutely where they are. So we're looking for this pattern here. So I'm looking to hold down the pleat flaps behind, and I'm looking to close up the pleat so that it doesn't peel open when I'm manipulating it. So I'm going to do a cross to hold the pleat down from behind. So that's holding all of that down behind. And then I'm going to close up the pleat so that it doesn't keep bursting and peeling open when I'm working with it. And I know it seems like, well, I've pinned it, so I'll just sew it. But this little step really does make the difference from having a really neat, crisp pleat to a pleat that's just, you know, sort of some folds. We don't want just some folds, we want actual pleats that add to the design of the dress. I'm going to do a few more to close that up. Doesn't matter if it goes down beyond where it needs to be, so that when we take the pins out, it's holding everything down. I could like move it around and it's not peeling open. So that is how you tack pleats down, so that you can manipulate your waistband and waist piece to fit evenly along the waist. All pleats are tacked. That tacking is brilliant as well, because now you can pick this skirt up and take it to the ironing board. You can press here, knowing that those tacks that are holding the pleats together are helping them stay close, and you're putting your press line in the right place. And then you'll get these crisp pleats that add a different dimension to the floral top of this dress. I've put one sleeve in, and it's quite easy to ease a sleeve in with this much sort of open lace, because you've got the gaps between the lace to sort of ease the fabric in, so it's quite easy. Just a few tips. So you want to make sure that you've sewn your underarm seam nice and neatly, and if you could overlock along there or use an overcast foot, that's useful. It's tricky to mark the notches on open weave fabric, so I've done it with an air erasable pen, so I've got a little purple notch there, and I've also put a pin in to show which is the back of my sleeve, so it's a little bit more tricky to mark just an open lace. You've still got all of your tacking holding those two layers together, so you treat that as if it's one layer of fabric, and you insert your sleeve in, pin at the underarm just to secure it, and you're going to need, because it's getting some quite thick layers here, you're going to need to pin your seam allowances down so that they don't get folded under the machine. And then you can start to work your sleeve in. There's my pin, there's my back notch. But as it gets fuller around here, you can sort of bunch up bits like this where there's an open weave hole, and there's my first notch actually, so that is okay, that's fitting fine. So you have to keep just easing your sleeve in, and then you're going to sew it on the machine at 1.5 and then trim out the excess crepe and interfacing and seam allowances, so you've just got a frilly edge of lace left, because the lining will enclose all of that, which I'll show you in the next stage. Next you need to put a lining bodice together, so that's exactly the same as you did the outer. Don't pick a really luxurious lining if you've got a lace on the outside, because you've already got a layer of lace and your layer of crepe or whatever you've chosen for your underlayer. You just need this to conceal all those edges and make it smooth, so don't go for another thick luxurious fabric, or you're going to start to run into a few problems on the seams. So I'm going to attach the waistband as well, so that I've got one complete bodice lining. Once your sleeves are attached into your bodice, it's then time to go back to the skirt. So the pockets go right sides together, and you find the dots, match them up. Then you're going to sew along here, and you're going to do that 4 times, one on each side of the skirt and also on the back pieces. So you're going to sew between the dots, and then once you've sewn the pockets on, we then sew the side seams by going around the pocket and down the side skirt. So we've done lots of preparation, got the back pleats in and basted across the top of the machine. I've got the front pleats in, they're pinned quite low down, they're hand basted and machine basted, so they're not going to move around, and all the pockets are understitched and pressed, so that should look like an inseam pocket, quite invisible in that seam there. And so now it's time to put our 2 very well prepared pieces together. So here's the top, with the sleeves, and we're going to put that right sides together onto the skirt. And this is where we want to be matching up the seams now, so we need to make sure all the pockets lying flat, you've got your side seam with your side seam, and make it really accurate. That's why at the beginning I hand sewed down these joins, because I wanted to make sure that I could keep that nice and open and flat. So it will take a bit of work to pin that all in evenly and make sure that everything's flat. And then we're going to take the 1.5 seam allowance along this waistband, and then you might want to try it on again to check whether the waist is lying on your waist before we enclose all of the inside seams with the lining. The tie waist can be optional, but I'm going to put it on this dress because it's not attached to the dress. You could wear it with the tie or without, depending on if it's the sort of place you're going to go with the bow on the back. So first of all, I'm going to add the 2 lengths together. So you've got 2 pieces. Going to add the normal seam allowance along the short end, sew the short ends together, then we're going to fold it in half and sew all the way around the outside. Fold the waistband in half, and you're going to leave a space around that centre seam that you just made, so leave that to turn your tie belt out. I like to put 2 pins, because that reminds me to stop there and to stop here, and we're going to sew across the ends, clip off the corners, so that we get a really nice pointed sash belt when we turn it out. The first thing to do is to sew part way up the back seam. So you're not going to sew all the way up to the back seam. You'll have a mark or a notch for the zip, so you can pin there, and then sew down the remaining part of the zip. Then there should be room for your zip and a little bit of handling at the end. Right, so we need to make sure that we get the zip matched up on the waist seam, so be careful with that, and also make sure that you've got the zip nice and lined up at the top. You've got lots of markers, indicator markers. You've got both the waistband seams and the length at the top, and then you've got some handling room here. So go ahead and put your invisible zip in. There are tutorials for putting in an invisible zip, so you could follow those if you need more help. If you're working with lace on a zip and you've got two tones like I have because we're doing VB, then I've marked the zip with a little mark with a erasable pen. So I marked on the zip where the waistline finished. I had a mark on the zip on the other side so that I could make sure that when we pull the zipper, the waistline is really nice and even. You can pattern match across the back, but it's tricky if you've got fitting. I just like to keep the sort of continuity of the pattern correct. So I've got the circles going across here and the flowers going across here. Okay, the last bit is to finish the bottom part of the zip. So just below the zip, you left a bit of room for handling so we can finish that back seam. To finish off your invisible zip, you're going to carry on the seam line from the hem. So you're going to get it back under your machine, carry this seam line along, and when you get to the bottom of the zip, you keep the zip out of the way. So keep that pointed up out of the way. I'm going to pin it to make sure I don't catch it under the machine, and I'm going to make this back seam line blend into the zips seam by 2 stitches. So when I get to the end of here, I'm going to go 1, 2, and that's it. And I'm going to leave long threads and tie it off so that that seam blends into the zip seam, and I'll show you what it looks like. We're going to enclose all the seams now before we put the zip in. I'm going to get the lining all matched up. It's going to match the centre front seam. You try and keep your seam allowances nice and flat at the back so that they're not making any sort of lumps and bumps around your neckline, because it's got a beautifully shaped neckline. I've lost a little bit of the sweetheart shape in mine because I squeezed a little pinch out of the front for fitting, but you want to try and keep that lovely curved shape. So you'll be wanting to make sure that when you sew here on your machine, you keep that 1.5 seam allowance all along. If you want to make it super accurate, there's no harm in marking it on, drawing it on with an air erasable pen so that you know you're going to get either side of the V completely even. Once you've got the lining attached and understitched, I'm going to go and do some pressing now with a press cloth to turn the lining to the inside, and that understitching really does help to not have your lining sort of poking up and showing. It really does keep the lining down and points it in the right direction with all the seam allowances, so don't skip that. It's time to do some pressing and a little bit of clipping maybe just on those few curves, and our neckline is finished. You're at the stage now where you're going to do quite a bit of hand finishing. So you're going to hand sew the waist lining down, you're going to hand sew the lining to the edge of the zip and finish the corners, and then hand finish around the sleeve heads. So you'll be tucking in the lining and tucking all the seam allowances in. If you've used a guipure lace and you're getting a bit of a thick roll around the neckline, you can do some pick stitches around there where you do a tiny little stitch, come through onto the white lace, go back through, run your thread along, pick stitch, a tiny little stitch, and that will hold that thicker seam allowance down, especially around the shoulders. Otherwise these shoulder seams look I'll show it you on the side, are quite bouncy, so you might want to put a pick stitch in there that holds it all down flat. And then we've just got the hem left to do. The hem is slightly curved on this dress, so I've put a row of easing stitches in the hem so that when I turn it up I can ease in that little bit of fullness. So I've overlocked the edge. If you haven't got an overlocker, you can turn the edge once and edge stitch it really small and then turn it up the amount that you want. I've just taken that little stage out and overlocked, and then I'm going to turn my hem up the amount that I need. But when I get to these sort of slightly more curved areas, I've got a little bit of easing in there so that I can keep the curve. I'm going to hand stitch it down. When you press it, you press out some of these little wrinkles that you get from the ease stitch, but it really does help. You can see that standing up on its own. It helps for the hem to roll over. Then I'm going to take out all of the tacking stitches and give it all a good press, and then the dress is finished. I hope you've enjoyed watching that sew along. Even if it's something that you've not got ready to make on your radar pretty soon, you could put it in your favourites and save it to come back to later if you need some reference points for working with lace. If you've worked with lace or you have used this pattern, we would love to see your make. Post it up on Minerva. You'll get a lot of love from the sewing community, and we can read all your details and how you made the dress. Don't forget to make a profile or account with Minerva. That way you can explore and investigate all the different Minerva Makers projects and hopefully inspire some of your own sewing. You could also join the Minerva Club, where you will get discounts and offers sent to your inbox throughout the year. If you have any questions about using this pattern, do put those below, and if you have any comments, we'd like to read those too. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.